Hey, everybody, it's Dr. Sally here, and this is Headspace for the Workplace. It's a podcast on how to cultivate vibrant and psychologically healthy and safe workplaces. And I'm always bringing you some really tactical stuff that you can implement like on Monday. And this is one of those things that not only can you apply at work, but you can also use in your personal life with anybody who's struggling. And it's this thing called caring contacts. I'm sure you've all experienced like when you got something out of the blue, like somebody just out of the blue was thinking of you and they sent you a little text or left you a voicemail that's just like, hey, you were on my mind today. And how like that felt good. That felt good. Well, we actually have research that shows it's just not a cute little thing to do. It actually has the power to save lives. And that's where we're headed today about implementing this idea of caring contacts at work. And my guest today is Cheri Skelding from the Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners. We've known each other a long time. Cheri, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
Yay.
Glad
What
to
are
be
the
here.
two things? Yeah, I'm excited too. It's way overdue. What are the two things that our listeners are going to walk away with today?
Two things are going to walk away with: connection beats complexity, and
Mm.
follow up saves lives.
Just singing the music to my ears. I think we can both agree, you and I, that the world of suicide prevention um, has gotten way overcomplicated, and also like the expectation is it's something dramatic. It's a dramatic intervention, and yet we have this really powerful body of work that says, actually, what if it's simple? And that was one of my favorite articles written about this whole topic. Like, what if suicide prevention is actually simple? In pieces of it anyway, that can
Yeah,
really make a difference. So tell us a little bit about you and how you're serving the world and what you're doing every day. What do you do?
sure. Yeah. So I am the clinical director at an organization called Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners, and we are primarily a suicide prevention organization. Historically, we have run a statewide crisis line and peer support follow-up line. We launched or created and launched the hospital follow-up program in Colorado. And currently we are working on building out our approach and our experience and our kind of bank of knowledge to apply all that we've learned in the last 15 years to help workplaces become more confident and stronger in changing culture and providing resources for folks where folks show up a lot, right, at work, to really put support in places where people can access it and it becomes meaningful.
That's right. And I am so proud of our innovative Colorado partners like Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners. You all have been pushing the envelope on what's possible for suicide prevention, especially in difficult and scary places. And you have moved the whole field forward with your invitation for peer support and the infrastructure you're building around this caring contacts piece that we'll talk about, and so many things. So I'm just really grateful for all your work and kind of your open-minded thinking about, can we try some other stuff? Because I think
Yeah.
people get really scared in the space of suicide
Yeah.
prevention, and you're all like, well, what we're working is not really having the total impact that we hope to have. Let's try some other things. So,
Exactly.
and we were chatting a little before we turned the mic on about being fellow empty nesters, and it is a transition, and how we're taking care of ourselves in this space of being empty nesters. So, what are some of the things that you're doing in your hobby time?
Well, I'm not quite there yet, but I'm preparing. I only
Yes.
have like a year and a half to go yet. But the notion gives the idea that there's actually maybe free time coming up in life. I don't know, that's a little scary concept. But before kids, I was really into photography, and my dad was an amateur photographer. So I've found some joy in picking up a camera again. And my niche right now is dog photography. It's just
Mm-hmm.
so fun. And so now I'm just bugging my neighbors a lot and stealing their dogs. But it's something I hope to grow more in the next couple of years because it's a creative outlet, and you get to hang out with dogs. I mean, you
I
can't
know.
go wrong there.
Dogs are the best. My dogs have their own Instagram channel.
Of course
I'm
they
a
do.
I'm
Of
a
course
little
they
dog crazy. Yes. All right, let's dive in. So your first takeaway was connection beats complexity.
do. Yes.
And that is like a profound thing anywhere you go. But
Mhm.
specifically here, what do you mean, and what is the call to action for a workplace to consider this?
Yeah. Well, like you introduced, we're talking about caring contacts here. And really what a caring contact is a brief non-demand, as we say, outreach to someone. And when I say non-demand, it's basically you saying, I'm curious, I'm here, I'm supportive, but I don't expect anything in return from you. And it's simple. What we know about folks, and if you look into suicide theory, like the interpersonal theory of suicide through Thomas Joyner, and just research we know about folks, is that not having connection, feeling like you don't belong, um, is a huge driver for why many people end up thinking that suicide is a reasonable answer or an escape from whatever it is they're managing. So being expressing your humanness and curiosity just to reach out and connect with someone, it doesn't have to be much more complicated than that, is what the research tells us. Like you said earlier, Sally, I think as a system, a behavioral health system, we have really thought about all the ways and all the liability and all the
Mm-hmm.
things we're scared of and all the risk we have to manage. And lost in that often is the person at the center of this and how isolated they feel and alone they feel. And sometimes our professional rules and strategies and such almost perpetuates that. Caring
Absolutely.
context is a quick, easy human way around
Mm-hmm.
that to get right to the person at the
Yeah.
heart of the struggle.
That's right. Yeah, I think that you pointed out so many good things there. I think, I think we get scared. Everybody gets scared. And they're like, well, somebody with higher qualifications should be
Yeah,
attending to this. So I'm going to hot potato you over to the fill in the
yeah,
blank, some kind of intake coordinator. Um, and they hear suicide and they panic and they pull out their safety blanket, which is what? A 40-page suicide risk assessment. And then it's
right,
an interrogation for 4 hours when really what the person wanted was just someone to witness their pain,
right.
often like just someone like you said, I'm curious, I'm here, I'm supportive. Can you give us like one or two examples of what caring context might look like or sound like for the people who are like, what the heck is this stuff? Because I also say, like, when I teach this, I said, try not to ask a question.
Yeah,
Try to express your deepest care for this person, whatever
yeah.
that looks like, or what you really appreciate about them. Could you give us a couple examples?
Yeah, sure. Well, and before I even give you like language too, the other thing I'll say is that how this happens
Mm-hmm.
can be really variable too, whether it's a voicemail that's left, it's a quick note that you drop in the mail, it's an email, a text. There's so many ways today that we can communicate and connect with each other. And I'm here to say any of them work, and all
Mm-hmm.
of them work,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. But it's really just what you said. Hey, Sally, when we spoke the other day, I know you're having a hard time. I just want you to know that I'm still here and I'm rooting for you.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's in the workplace, hey, I know this project is really tough and you're under a lot of stress. I'm so glad you're part of our team.
Exactly.
And it's really simple. And like your intro said, it's think about tap into those times where someone has just said something to you that was like, oh wow, that person like took a second to actually
Mm-hmm.
say something to me. We don't tend to do that a lot with each other. But for that person that's feeling isolated, feeling alone, maybe invisible, what a great way to help them be seen.
Yes, what you made me of like one of my favorite stories to tell in this space, where I was working with a police officer who
Hmm.
was having problems with his alcohol use, and then had a major trauma, and it just spiraled out of control, and he had a near lethal suicide attempt. And his turnaround moment was not learning cognitive behavioral therapy and how to change his thoughts, was not when he started taking medication for his anxiety. His turnaround story was when his senior boss and the second person in command said to him, you are part of our family,
Hmm.
you matter to our mission,
Hmm.
we're going to fight like hell to get you back.
Yeah.
And that was it. I mean, it was like 3 sentences long, but it meant
Hmm.
everything to him that somebody saw him and had faith in him and gave him some strength in that moment to kind of keep going forward. So I'm not knocking medication and cognitive behavioral therapy, but
No,
when
no,
you
no.
when you ask people what actually helps them heal, it is these genuine human connections that
Yeah.
really give them that fight to keep going and keep learning new skills and
Yeah.
keep trying new things.
And it's something that all of us have the power to provide. We're really just asking people to show up as humans, right? You don't have to have tons of training. You don't have to have a degree, any of these things. You can connect to your humanness and what that means and reach out to someone. And I think, for almost 15 years, our organization and I oversaw the crisis line. And one thing that was just a theme throughout every call was someone looking to connect with something, whether it be other people, whether it be with a bigger purpose. It Connection is it's like the golden thread through so many of the crisis calls that we took year after year after year. And the solutions to that sometimes can be fairly easy, at least the first step. And I think that's what Caring Contacts is all about, is starting that first step.
I was talking to a gentleman a couple of days ago, and he said there are no panaceas for suicide or despair, but human connection comes about as close as we can get. And you know who that gentleman was? The grandson of Sigmund Freud. I'm going to have him on a podcast on a future date. But, I just thought it was so interesting that here's this legacy of how we've started to think about human psychology, saying, it's pretty much human connection. That's really a really good thing for people when it's healthy and authentic. Yeah. Can you talk just a little bit about, because I think this idea of caring contacts really emerged out of this pretty rigorous research, double-blind, randomized control trial kinds of things, in really difficult places, like coming out of psychiatric hospitals or, vulnerable veterans transitioning back into society, like these really critical crisis trauma types of things. But we also know it helps in other places. Can you talk just for a little bit about what this is look like, as we like to say, in the upstream suicide prevention world, or the midstream, and not just in the downstream? How can we use this actually to bolster protective factors?
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, we're talking about connection. So where do we feel as humans connection matters? And when we talk about the upstream places, there are times where we know we can anticipate that someone might be having a harder time, or things are coming their way again. Anniversaries of traumatic events, or anniversaries of death of a loved one, things like that. Dropping a line to say, hey, I know this is coming up and I'm thinking about you, and I want you to know I'm here. We have in the caring contact space, there's a lot of room to really tap into the power of peer support, right? So there are people that there's not a hierarchy here. There are people that are similar to you, like you, have similar experiences to you, who can connect on, hey, I'm going through a similar thing right now, or this happened to me last year, and finding some support and strength in numbers, so to speak. So it's not necessarily, and you're right, the research is really based in following up after something has really big has happened, but we can use this as a way to open doors, give permission for people to ask for help, or to speak about what's going on before someone reaches a crisis state. Sometimes it's just noticing that something's changed, or somebody might be a little off. We're not talking full-blown crisis. We're looking for a connection to help support someone during a specific time.
Yeah, I even advocate. I do this little exercise when I do my workshops, going, who's your A team? Go send a caring contact to them right now, regardless of what they're going through, because it's like a little mini love letter. And I think sometimes we get so busy and so tactical. Like, when are we picking up the kids, and who's making dinner, and did you drop the thing off at the blah, blah, blah. And we forget to like show up for the people that we care about. And those little tiny love letters, they light up the brain. Like, somebody noticed me today. Somebody took time out of their day to tell me that I'm worthy. That makes me feel good. And it's like a little deposit in the buffering system. Like, when things go sideways, like, yeah, but Mary sent me a note that said I'm worthy. So
right. Well, and recognizing when things are going well too. I mean, I think to stereotype behavioral health professionals, because I put myself into that category, we're really good at recognizing when things aren't going really well. But when things are going well, we just move on to the next thing. It's like, good, that's done, we move on. But taking that moment to recognize your team at work, or like you say, your family members, that's the glue that holds us together for when things maybe aren't going so well.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought it back to the workplace, because this could feel like, oh, is this something I just do with my friends or my kids? Expand a little bit on work. Really? We want to do this at work? And like, is it crossing some boundary if I'm the manager of somebody or the HR person? What does this look like at work?
Yeah. And that's such a common thing, I think, when you talk with workplaces is, well, if I know something about somebody, I shouldn't necessarily be talking to them about it, or where's the boundary? I'm the boss, I'm not the friend, whatever. But again, our focus here is on connection. And in a workplace, it might not be like a buddy connection, but it is a coworker connection, right? It's a supervisor supervisee connection. And that's what we're elaborating here is to build that relationship. So what could it look like? It could look like a lot of different things. There are natural touch points in the workplace where we find out how people are doing. Right, that might be in HR, maybe your benefits manager who knows somebody's like, oh, I need to figure out how to use my benefits because this, that, or the other thing's going on. Again, a caring contact, like you said, isn't asking questions, isn't digging for more information, but it's a follow up later to say, hey, we talked the other day. I know you got a lot going on. If you need any more information, let me know. Just know that I'm here. It could be a supervisor, the manager, who, yes, you're talking about performance problems, or maybe you're talking about struggles that somebody's having in a supervision with their work responsibilities, but that doesn't prevent someone from a couple days later that afternoon saying, hey, I'm glad we talked about this. I'm rooting for you. I think this is going to work out, or I'm glad you're part of our team. Um, it's about maintaining a relationship, and part of that is the team building that happens then, which it's hard to argue that that's not toward the benefit of other coworkers, the larger team, and the larger organization as well.
Excellent. Love it. Let's move on to your second takeaway, which is follow up saves lives. So now we're talking about something big has happened. So
Yeah.
there's been some kind of mental health emergency. Maybe someone's had to take a leave. Maybe there's been a suicide attempt, a suicide loss. Something's going on around mental health emergency. And there's still a lot of fear, a lot of what if, like shoulda, coulda, wouldas, all kinds of stuff. How does this idea of caring contacts save lives? Like, how does this work?
Yeah. Well, and this is where the research is based. Like we said, individuals that are leaving the hospital after a suicide attempt or a serious behavioral health crisis, and watching what happens when someone leaves that setting and returns to real life, whatever that is, right? Going back to the day to day grind that might be their life. And what research tells us is that following up with people, continuing to make contact, um, is preventative. People are at less risk for suicide when they have connections. So, what the research has demonstrated is that suicide risk comes down. For example, and for folks that leave a hospital, once they've been seen in an emergency room or hospitalized, contrary to what many people think, and many people in the behavioral health field still think, folks are at higher risk for suicide when they leave
That's
after
right.
they've been quote unquote treated for their crisis. Caring contacts brings that risk substantially down. The early research said, more than a 2 times benefit for folks that continue to have suicidal ideation or suicidal risk. So there's not really a question about if it works, because it does. And if we can get open enough and smart enough to figure out how to apply those same lessons to other places in life, we can be helping people in far greater capacity, and greater range. So, for example, again, we'll take it back to the workplace. Uh, People may have left work. We may have known that there was a crisis in their life. Maybe there was a medical crisis, and they're returning to the workforce. We see that these big transitions in people's lives, whether they're leaving a hospital, whether they're leaving jail, whether they're in a housing crisis, or bed off work, coming back to work, or getting ready to leave work, take a leave, and going into this new environment. Those are the places where caring contacts really seeks to make the largest impact. It's There's something pivotal that's happened. There's a major stressor or a major event, and having that increased connection or building that connection during those vulnerable times is what actually saves lives. We focus a lot in the suicide prevention world on what we call gatekeeper trainings, right? The things that raise our awareness and help us learn more about signs of suicide risk and how to talk to people. And lots of energy is invested in that area. And I'm not knocking that. But we also see the research says that the impact of that sort of tapers off pretty quickly after somebody kind of goes through the training, and then maybe they don't practice it, or they forget about it, or they go back to their life and don't really figure out a way to integrate it. Um, Doing a follow-up program or a caring contact program shows to have those benefits long after any other intervention that we've really seen in that way, up to a year. Some studies will say 5 years, some studies will say 10 years,
Wow.
that the preventative factors of knowing that somebody cared about you in your hardest times really makes an impact on somebody's life.
Yes. Oh, so much there. First of all, I want to make sure that the listeners did not miss. We have decades of research that show, especially involuntary short-term hospitalization for people in a suicide crisis, overwhelmingly evidence that says suicide risk goes up. Again,
Yes.
that's contrary to popular opinion, contrary to general consensus, because there's so much fear. Like if we just get them to the hospital, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to
Stay
be
safe
fixed.
tonight. That's all we need to do. It's just
Yes.
tonight. Yeah.
No, it's not what the research shows. And that's
Yeah.
why it is absolutely the last resort, the last resort. So instead of that, because that can also be very traumatizing for everybody involved, we're going to do some other things that are based in this human connection idea that can give us, a fighting chance to make the person feel like they're seen and known and understood. And that you have a caring contacts program, but there's another piece to it as well, which is don't assume necessarily that the person does not want people at work to support them.
Yeah.
Invite consent, informed consent around this process. Often there are close friends that already know and don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And even while the person's out in recovery or in the hospital or whatever, sometimes getting those messages that are just thinking about you, rooting for you, we're here, we love you, you matter, we'll get you all caught up when you get back, don't worry about it, we got you. Like those kinds of messages can really help people feel like, okay, this is a temporary bump in my life. I'm going to go back to a place where I'm loved. And it matters. It definitely matters at work. But the assumption is everybody wants it private and it gets hot potatoed. And then it's super awkward and weird for everybody when that reintegration process happening. So this part of caring context can really serve as a bridge in that process.
Yeah. And that assumption that people want everything private unintentionally, can lead to increased isolation or feeling like I'm not allowed to talk about it, or no one's supposed to know, or it's supposed to be my secret. And all good intentions, we know privacy is something that people often want, and we should respect that. But to make that assumption that that's helpful, it could be a pretty, faulty assumption to start with.
Yeah. So it often reinforces all of the bias, discrimination, and prejudice in the situation. So you could say something like, when people go out for cancer treatment or after a really bad car accident, sometimes they like to hear from their coworkers, just like that people are thinking about them. Would that be helpful for you in this situation? Because of course we know that's the truth, that we like to be supported when we're going through a tough time. So just open up as an option and not just make those assumptions, I think is what we're saying. So Cheri, I'm going to go back and do just a little quick recap. And then I want to make sure that we bring it home with what you absolutely want to make sure is the main message. So if you're just tuning in or tuning back in, I'm here with Cheri Skelding from the Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners. We're talking about a very simple but profound thing that anybody can do. We can teach it to middle schoolers. Anybody can do it. It takes a second, and the research is unequivocal. It works. It works when it comes across authentically as being curious and supportive. And I'm here when people are going through difficult transitions, when people have come through a mental health emergency, or even proactively is just bolstering people's sense of belonging, of something big to something bigger than themselves. And so we're actually saying to all of you out there, don't overthink it. Like, please just do the simple thing of showing that you care about your people. And that if there is a mental health emergency, think about this caring contact piece as part of the follow-up and reintegration. It absolutely is life-saving. We're not exaggerating. It's not just a cute thing to do. It's actually life-saving. So
it is.
There we go. So Cheri, what do you want to make sure that people do not forget from our conversation?
Well, just to reiterate sort of what we said at the beginning is remembering that connection beats complexity and follow-up saves lives. And at the end of the day, the take home is just do it, just try it, don't overthink it, just connect, because you might save a life.
That's awesome. And it's truth. Not hyperbole. It's truth.
Yes.
So, Cheri, this is awesome. And this is like one of my favorite things. There's not a ton of things that we can say actually work in suicide prevention where we're like, yes, this works to save lives. This is one of them.
It is.
This is one of them. I know. And so it gets me super excited that it's so universally anybody could do it. If people want to connect with you more, learn more about your Caring Contacts program, all the other services that you all do at Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners, connect with you, connect with this research that you've been talking about, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
An easy way is if you want to learn more about our programs, you can go to rmcrisispartners.org or just Google Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners will come up. There'll be information on there about the different programs that we have, our workplace solutions, as well as our Caring Contact program. I can be reached through there. Our emails are on there. That's probably just the easiest way.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Yeah. Dive into this, everybody. It is also, low-hanging fruit in terms of cost. As it's easy. Let's just do it. Thank you all for tuning in and making this a priority for your day. Thank you to our incredible team behind the scenes here, Dave, Chase, Stacy, Elias, and many others. Of course, it takes a village. And if you got something out of this, please share. We want to spread this very tactical thing everywhere we can go. So in closing, working minds work well together. There's lots we can learn from each other to improve the well-being of our workplaces. Until we meet again, take care.